I've seen people like literally lift my logo and just change the wording slightly,
right.
you know. And I think those were the times where I realized, oh, you truly are one of, you know, the first person doing this. So people don't know how to navigate it other than to imitate it. I guess maybe the culture here is to gatekeep quite a bit, but I'm very open, and it's like I feel like the sky is big enough for everyone. Life is so spiritual.
Right.
It's more so spiritual than the physical that you experience on a daily basis. I would, you know, go into spas and have like a massage or a facial, and I would forget the grief in that moment. Like I just felt peace in that moment, and I didn't understand the connection. The journey to beauty, I find, starts from a place of self-awareness and self-love. If you're not at a place where, you know, you're experiencing peace of mind and inner wellness, it's very difficult for that to radiate, you know, on the surface.
I feel like the universe, God, wouldn't give me anything that is beyond me. When it comes to beauty and appearances, there's a lot more that goes into it than just the way we look. There's a lot more details. There's also a medical aspect. There's also a spiritual, emotional aspect. And today, I'm going to be discussing a very interesting lady's perspective on beauty, aesthetics, and just all things development. So with me today is Ameera Abraham.
Hi, Jaffel.
And
Thanks
she's
so much for
a
having
beauty entrepreneur.
me. Yeah.
I had to like working on that intro. Welcome. How are you
Nailed
today?
it.
I nailed it. Oh,
Yeah.
no pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got
Also, the founder of the nail.
the nail bar.
Nail
Yes.
bar. Oh.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ameera Abraham, like you said. I'm a beauty entrepreneur, and I've had, you know, the privilege of serving the Abuja beauty space over 14 years.
15 years.
With the nail bar. I've recently gone into cosmetic manufacturing, branding, and package design, not just within Nigeria, but across Africa now. So very excited about that. Thank you. And also I've authored a book. I'm generally just, you know, a creative that, you know, has many, many outlets for that expression. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. So you talked about like, so how long have you don't sound like you've lived in Nigeria for very long.
I have. I've lived in Nigeria now for 15 years.
15 years, right?
Yes, and I mean I'm Nigerian, so I don't
No, of course.
think. Yeah,
of course,
I do.
Of course,
think
I'm not.
that-
That's not. I'm not. I'm not. No, I'm just saying. It's like, did you grow up in Nigeria?
Yes, I had bits of my childhood here, but I spent most of my time in England. I was in boarding school down through till from primary school through to secondary, and then right through to my university.
Okay.
And then I moved back here for NYSC, and shortly after that started the nail bar.
Wow.
And yeah, I've been here ever since.
So like, why did you decide to go into business? Like you just moved back. Like I'm curious to know what the thought process was like.
So it wasn't actually something it wasn't premeditated. I didn't have this grand plan from the start. I studied politics and international relations, and when I moved back, so prior to moving back, I experienced grief. I lost one of my closest cousins, and I'd never lost someone, you know, that close to me before. And that's how I got into like the spa and beauty space, because I would, you know, go into spas and have like a massage or a facial, and I would forget the grief in that moment. Like I just felt peace in that moment, and I didn't understand the connection. And I think because I was so deeply grieving, the fact that I was getting a bit of solace from this experience, I wanted to understand the why or the how behind it. So while I was doing my degree, I enrolled in beauty school as well. And I was taking, you know, the classes, the theory, and all of that. So when I moved back, started NYSC, So I was in an organization that I thought would be like the EU on a West African scale, and I was so excited. But then I got there and realized it wasn't quite as black and white. And then I thought, okay, I don't think this space is for me just because of the way that I'm set up, right? Emotionally, morally, and I guess also
So
intellectually.
you're talking about the political space. Yeah.
Yes, yes, the
Pan-African perspective.
exactly. So, I thought about it. I'd gone round Abuja, being, fully entrenched in the spa culture at that time. I couldn't really find anywhere that addressed the needs that I was accustomed to. And because I'd already gotten the qualifications, I just thought, you know what?
Might as well.
This is like an open market. There's, it's the perfect opportunity to kickstart this, and I'm already qualified. And looking around, a lot of people who were in the business or something similar were not qualified. It was just, hobbies turned into business. So I thought this is definitely an advantage, and I went ahead and did it.
So I was like the first plunge.
Yes.
How's that like? It must have been, because obviously coming from the culture you're used to, like, working and schooling in the UK versus coming back to Nigeria when it's like a different landscape. What was that like?
So I think one of the things that like sucked me in at the time, I don't know if you remember, but this was like Good Luck Jonathan's time, and the slogan was like a breath of fresh air, and it just felt like, things were changing. So I was excited to be away from England, the dreary weather, and I'd had enough at that time, and I wanted to be home. And it just felt like there were so many opportunities coming up. I was very naive when I moved back. I had no clue what the system here was like, especially in terms of business. Because even while living in Nigeria, I was in a bubble, I would say. I was very sheltered. My parents, I didn't really experience Nigeria for what it was until I went into business and realized how completely different, it was. And, in the early days, there were times where I desperately just wanted to pack up and go back to what I was used to. But I think, just understanding that there's an opportunity to do something that's never been done here before kept me going.
Right.
Yeah. And I definitely had support. Like my mom was very hands-on, maybe because she was my first investor. She was like, listen, I put my money here, you better make it work. No, but aside from that, no, she's been very involved from the beginning. She still is. She's just a wealth of wisdom, and it's really helped me in my journey. Yeah.
That's really refreshing to have. It's like not everyone has the opportunity to have someone like that.
Yeah.
Especially your mom.
Exactly.
Right?
I don't take that for granted.
Yeah, of course, because like a lot of people would have parents that care about them but don't understand the business that they're in.
Yeah.
And not able to support. So it's refreshing that your mom is as involved as she is.
Yeah. I mean, she has like a legal and financial background.
Okay.
So I think her involvement was very much in the structural side of things. And like, I guess, corporate governance, even in such a small business. So having that at the forefront of my mind allowed me to, put systems and structures in place from the beginning. I didn't really look at it as just this small business. I just always had like a bigger vision for it because of that input.
That is so crazy. Because like what you said about like moving back during GJ's time as well, I kind of moved back at a similar time.
Yeah.
And I think I moved back in 2013. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she was like, Jack, well, why are you coming back? Like, nothing there. Like, she's from Warrior, and she would, like, when she wants to tell you something, she'll speak pidgin. Like, Jack, well, nothing there. What are you coming there? Like, just stay there, get married, do whatever. Don't come back. And I remember telling her that, like, oh, I feel like my country needs me.
Yeah, I think that's definitely how a lot of us felt at that time.
Yeah, because it kind of felt like
PR for Jonathan.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Nigeria was about to finally pick up. And I remember like when I went to school, I was just sitting there. And I always sit in class or I was just like, oh, this shit hasn't been done back home.
Yeah,
I always would see opportunities for that. But when I moved back, you know what I mean? It was so different as well. You know what I mean?
The reality of ground was different.
Yes, so different. And I didn't go into working for myself till like a couple years down the line, right? So that's why I really respect the fact that like, because when you work in Nigeria for yourself, like you have no safety nets.
Zero.
You have no safety
Yeah.
nets, and if you're used to a culture where things are explicit, clearly stated, working in Nigeria would confuse you a bit. Because people don't always mean what they say or say what they mean.
Oh my God.
So you have to kind of like.
I think that was one of my biggest, biggest shocks for me.
It's like
was realizing that people don't actually mean what they say here, and it's difficult when you're wired to just be
take everything on
open.
Yeah.
Yeah, open and honest. So that was definitely a rude shock. But I think, you know, it's difficult anywhere in the world to build anything from scratch.
Yeah.
And I find that Nigerian entrepreneurs that are able to do that in such a volatile terrain are superheroes.
Right.
You know, I genuinely like applaud and commend every entrepreneur in Nigeria that makes things work. You know, for a business to survive beyond a year or two here, you have to be doing something right.
And you've done 14 years.
Yeah.
You're definitely doing a lot of amazing things as well. Because I also know, like, so one of the things that Nigerian business people or people trying to start things in business go through is there's not a lot of blueprints that you can follow. There's not a lot of information out there in terms of best practices or learning from people's journeys. Like, you kind of sound like you were almost like a pioneer in that space in Abuja. So
I think, you know, I definitely was. It was the first nail spa in Abuja. There were other spas, but like full-on day spas, maybe 2 or 3 that I knew about. But even in those spas, they literally have, if it was this entire room, they literally just had like one little corner for the nails. So it was very underrepresented. Nobody really focused on that. And so I thought, you know, when you go to beauty school, you learn everything. You learn like the manicures, the pedicures, the facials, massages. And so I thought, okay, I will kick off with the nail spa side of things. And then as we grow, we'll expand our services. And that's how it's been over the past few years. But I found that because there was no nail spa, shortly after I started, my colors, my brand colors were lilac and like a plum. And all of a sudden, every salon was expanding their nail section and everything was lilac, you know. I've seen people like literally lift my logo and just change the wording slightly, you know. And I think those were the times where I realized, oh, you truly are one of, you know, the first person doing this. So people don't know how to navigate it other than to imitate it. And so I thought, okay, there's a bigger vision here, because for me it was more about establishing the industry as a whole than it was establishing myself. For the longest time, the beauty industry has always been, you know, termed under fashion. And it's completely different, right? But I realize it's because there is no recognition. There isn't enough, or there weren't enough beauty establishments at the time to be able to say, oh, hi, government, this is who we are, what we do. And 14 years later, you know, it's so exciting to see how much has changed from 2011. Yeah.
And so, like, the first time I ever stumbled on anything concerning you was an ad about your book. Right? The full set.
Yeah, the full set.
Yeah. And then I was just like, wow, all right. So part of what I was asking earlier about how like there's not a lot of things that you could pick up and say, okay, I want to go into this industry. Who has been there before me? What were their lessons, pitfalls, and how can I learn from them? And so seeing that you were writing a book, that made me really curious. Like, so
thank you.
Talk, what is
so the full set book was essentially like a memoir on my 10-year experience in the beauty industry. And so the year that we were turning 10 was COVID. So I planned to have like a whole thing, but then COVID happened and I thought, okay, this is now more about impact. How can I impact my industry in a way that gives a sense of assurance to people in such a time of great fear, right? Because we didn't know what COVID was. People were panicking. People's livelihoods were on the line. It was just really, really, it was a horrible time. I was also dealing with a lot of personal things at the time. So writing the book was an outlet for me. But at the same time, knowing that it would go on to impact my industry in such a positive way was so key for me. It was essentially the book I wrote that I didn't have and needed at the time that I started. And I find that, I guess maybe the culture here is to gatekeep quite a bit, but I'm very open, and it's like, I feel like the sky is big enough for everyone,
yeah.
right? I've always had a very abundance type mindset, not a
there's enough.
scarcity one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more than enough. So why are you, and I just feel like, things are designed to be bigger than the individual.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's what the full set really was about.
Makes sense. Like, because another thing that you said that I like is you're talking about how it's not just about building yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a big ecosystem person because I feel like if the ecosystem is healthy,
Yeah.
all the players within the ecosystem would feed well enough.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I like the idea that you wanted to help strengthen the ecosystem from a knowledge perspective, because we don't, in Nigeria, we struggle with moving from a place of knowledge and understanding. So that was pretty good. But I also know like your book and the work that you did kind of shaped or paved the way for the standards in the industry. Do you want to?
So it's very interesting that you say that, because at the time that I wrote the book, like I said, I was going through something personally. There was also a give back mindset because it was COVID. But I found that, I didn't even get as much recognition in Nigeria for the book as I did it was South Africa that actually paved the way. So someone from Professional Beauty in South Africa reached out and was like, oh my God, this is the first for even Africa. It's not just Nigeria, even till date, like the online courses, because I went on to expand the book into an online course. And most of the students are, from Tanzania, from the Southern and Eastern African bloc, more so than Nigeria. So it's very humbling to know that it has a global, I guess it resonates globally. It's not limited to a local perspective. And as the years have gone by, the Standards Organization of Nigeria have now set up a technical committee for beauty and wellness services, which I'm, one of the pioneer members of. So it's very exciting. All these years have gone by, and we're finally now at a stage where we can push for standards and regulation and hopefully, begin to shape the industry into one that's globally recognized. So I'm so glad to be part of that.
That's really refreshing as well. Like, so, but you're also talking to me about how like you started your business trying to do like nails, and at the back of your mind, you knew that's not where it was going to stop.
Oh no, I knew that for sure, because so I've always been, an academic. I've always been more of an academic. So I think one of the shocking things with the book also was just like, how is a beauty person writing a book? You don't connect the two. It's not the first thing that comes to you, right? But because I've always been an academic, I just thought, okay, what tools do I have to express this?
Right.
And because beauty is my passion, right? I thought, okay, this is my passion, but I also have these other gifts in terms of education and, whatnot. How can I make these two work, in synergy? And I guess that's all I've tried to do, even with like product formulations and things like that.
So this is a bit abstract, right?
Okay.
So like with beauty, like, so I started off by talking about how I don't think beauty is skin deep.
Yeah.
Right? So I just wanted to know, from your perspective, like, how would you define beauty?
So first of all, right, beauty, it's such a broad scope.
Yeah.
Even when you try to bring it down to like an industry level, there's so many, little clusters in there. The journey to beauty, I find, starts from a place of self-awareness and self-love. If you're not at a place where, you're experiencing peace of mind and inner wellness, it's very difficult for that to radiate, on the surface. So it comes across as a very superficial industry,
Yeah.
when in reality, you know, it's rather holistic. You're looking at lifestyle, you're looking at emotional well-being, you're looking at stress levels, you're looking at you know, just the everyday factors that affect one's life and how those things manifest on the skin, the hair, the nails. You know, I can look at someone's nails now and say, oh, I know what's missing. You know, you can see certain deficiencies from that.
Can you see anything here?
Yeah, you don't seem to have anything.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe just a manicure and you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, you know, it's like I said, very holistic, and there's so many layers that go into it, and it's become so much more it's become a smarter industry as well, in the same way that there's tech for, you know, everything. There's also beauty tech, so you find that you're getting more rapid results, more targeted solutions than the broad things that existed 10, 15 years ago.
So I know you just launched a brand recently.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can, as one of the most distinct colors I've seen in branding. Like I can always see it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so is this one of is your latest baby?
Yes, Amali. It's interesting though. So Amali Cosmetics was launched in 2017 initially, and it was just non-toxic nail polishes at the time.
Yeah.
But I, again, had a personal situation, and so I shut down Amali. And I thought, oh, in 6 months I'll rebrand and it will be back and everything will be fine. That's not what happened. It took me another 2 years before I rebranded and then relaunched. So from my personal journey with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's basically a hormonal imbalance situation. I didn't realize that topical products could affect the symptoms that you experience or exacerbate them. And so Amali, the color teal represents, you know, women's health essentially. So like cervical cancer, PCOS, that's the color that is associated with those, I guess, diseases. And so it only made sense to go with teal. Yeah. Right. And then the product formulations are non-toxic, they're clean, and they're designed essentially to work in harmony with your hormones to maintain hormonal balance. So I'm very excited for the work that I'm doing with Amali because it's all homegrown. The only thing that I bring in is the actual packaging, but design homegrown, formulations homegrown, production of the products homegrown. It's very exciting. Yeah.
But does Amali mean anything?
Amali means hope.
Okay.
Yes, because with PCOS, I remember when I was diagnosed at 16, it was fairly new. Even the doctors were just like, oh, well, there's really nothing we can do for you. It's more like a lifestyle adjustment thing. Whereas now, you know, there's supplements out there, there's certain medications that they would recommend and things. So there's a lot more awareness and intentionality behind it. But for me, it required a lot of faith and hope to cope with that. I no longer have PCOS. You know, I've gone on, it causes infertility in most women. I've gone on to have 2 children, and the symptoms of PCOS have reversed for me, thank God. So yeah, there was a lot of hope and faith involved, which is why I called it Amali.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. So like, it sounds like a thoughtful brand.
Yeah, very, very, very well.
No, but like you seem like you're very thoughtful in general. Like that's how you approach things.
Yeah, I like to think I'm intentional.
No, I do believe so. Based on like the encounters that we've had, and I've seen you speak a lot. You know what I mean? Especially around like women empowerment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think also as well, it's important for more women like you to speak up. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes Nigeria has a way of putting women into like boxes. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's like you can't be beautiful and smart, or like it's almost like you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But then you've been able to combine all these things. You know what I mean? But then walk me through your journey in, because it is one thing to find yourself, and it's another thing to find yourself and say, you know what, I can help people find themselves as well.
Yeah.
So like, how did you come from finding yourself to now being a voice?
You know what's interesting? I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about like finding yourself and coming into your own and things like that. but I don't really feel like I went through that.
Okay.
I feel like it's odd, right? Because my parents were just, I had very intentional parents from the beginning.
Right.
And I read stories online and realize that, oh, that was actually a privilege for me to have, because a lot of people didn't have that.
Right.
But my parents were very intentional in the way that I was raised, and like even choices for schools and extracurricular activities and things that shaped me into the person that I am.
Like
so
dancing?
I've always had, yes, please, let's not go there. No, but I've seen how all of the things that were big parts of my childhood have sort of transcended into what I do now. I've always had a strong sense of self. I've always been, I would say, comfortable and confident in my own skin. And I think it's because I had a very enabling environment in terms of like the parents that I had. So what I would say is I've grown over the years, but not so much that I found myself, because I've always known.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Even when I remember times where in schools, because I went to so many different schools at different stages of my life, I would be the new girl in school and someone would try to say something or project something and I wouldn't even flinch.
Like
So the people that are trying to gang up on me one morning are like all trying to be my friends by lunchtime,
Right,
because I was
because-
just so sure of myself. There was nothing you could say to me that would make me, cower. And I think the only place I would say that there was a change in me was, in 2021 or 2022, I think, I had a major transition from self-confidence to God confidence.
Okay.
And that's how my podcast came around, the healing series, and just in terms of faith, because there's a huge difference. You can be afforded so many things in life that make you very self-confident, but when you live in a place like Nigeria, I never understood like the deep spiritual commitments that were here, living outside of it. But moving back and seeing certain things, you know that it can only be God, right? It's something way bigger than you that you can't explain. And that would be the area that I would say there was a major discovery.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, what was this discovery that you're nothing without God, or
Absolutely.
right?
That life is so spiritual.
Right.
It's more so spiritual than the physical that you experience on a daily
It's
basis.
interesting coming from someone that is in the beauty
space.
right? So like, how do you balance the fact that like, yes, I want you to take care of your body, but then also I feel like there's a lot more to you.
Yeah.
Like your mind and your spirit.
I think it's interesting that, everything has sort of worked together really beautifully, because as an esthetician as well, I deal with people's skin concerns, and, healing is a very spiritual aspect as well. I could use all sorts of treatments and it wouldn't work if, what's the saying? There's healing in the hands, right? So if you're Christian, you understand the importance of laying of hands and things like that. So I feel like everything is intertwined. I don't think
like,
it's
separate
one or the other.
Like
Yes,
that makes
it's
sense.
all
That makes
intertwined.
sense. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So like right now is like, how would you? Because like I'm very particular about. It's an interesting time for women working in Nigeria. It's a lot of noise here and there. Do you know what I mean? So what would you say to young girls standing up? You know what I mean? Obviously, you've also mentioned the fact that you feel like your upbringing had a lot to do with it, right? Let's just take upbringing aside, right? Like in terms of dealing with the Nigerian context, it was in front of you. What advice would you give to like?
It's interesting you say this, because even with all the upbringing and support that I had, there were certain nuances that I wasn't accustomed to, and I had to learn on my own. And what I would say is, it's very important to be self-aware. It's very important to know who you are outside of the things that people try to use to define you. That's number one. Once you know who you are, you don't cower to peer pressure. You don't cower to, oh, everyone's doing this, so I should be doing it too. At the time I started Nail Bar, nobody believed in it. There really wasn't. It was just like, I remember speaking to like a bunch of my cousins and stuff. And it was just like, oh, yeah, that's great, you know. But I remember when I opened up, apart from like the launch day, after that, I don't think I ever saw any one of them in that space. Do you get what I mean? And that can be very, it can leave you feeling like, oh my God, did I make the right decision?
Exactly.
The people closest to me aren't even supporting this. How do I navigate this? But when you understand that there's a calling bigger than the people you expect to support you or to hold your hand through something, you stick to the vision. So I feel like a lot of people have visions that others can't relate to at the time that they're starting out. But I learned the hard way that, you know, the only person that needs to believe in your vision is you.
Yeah.
Right? You can even have people that you share it with and they're like, oh my God, yes, this, that, and the other, but they don't
Still get it.
Still see it in the way that you do. And this is also how I feel about competition in general. You know, we can be operating in the same space. For instance, you know, you could be a nail spa as well, but I don't think you're my competition because what I carry is completely different to what you carry, right? So I'm very big on women understanding who it is that they are first, right? And being clear about what it is their calling is. You know, God gives everyone an individual purpose. And if you happen to end up in the same beauty industry because God has called you into that, then he has people like me ready, waiting to usher you in and show you the way. Do you see what I mean? It's not because, oh, I've raised you so you can do what Ameera is doing exactly. No, that's not how it works. So for me, it's just that self-awareness, the identity, knowing who it is that you are, hearing out to know what your own purpose is, right? Because there's a huge copy and paste culture here.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, she's doing it. She's making money
working?
from this, so let me just do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you could be in the wrong space for so long, and the people who need you in the space you're supposed to be in are suffering because you're not filling that need.
That is so crazy. Like there was one book I read. I can't remember what it was called, but like what I picked up is it was talking about like energies and how constantly the universe looks for us based on our energy. Sometimes the universe can't recognize us because we're too busy trying to be somebody else.
Oh my goodness. So listen, there's something I read in Stephen Furtick's book, Unqualified, and it stuck out to me. God cannot bless the person you pretend to be.
Of course. Like you got like if
you know, so again, it still comes down to that identity and self-awareness. Yes.
Because also for me as well, it's like I'm very big on like personal relationships with yourself. Right? I feel like that's the most important relationship, and like everything that you said in terms of like getting to know who you are and what you stand for can only come when you spend time with getting to know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm borderline reclusive. Like
you spend a lot of time.
I spend a lot of time alone. If I'm not with my kids, then yeah, I'm alone, and I find that, you know, it allows for me to reflect. It allows for me to have very difficult conversations with myself, you know, because I find that something that that's lacking in a lot of people here is accountability. And it stems, you know, I hold it responsible for a lot of the things that are not working out here. And, you know, these things need to be addressed from the home front, because obviously families form societies and societies form what we know as the government, right? So accountability is so key. And you can't really hear what God is saying when you're surrounded by noise. So it's important to find time. I'm not saying, oh, everyone has to be reclusive like me, but you know, it's important to find time where you pull back and just have that quiet moment, drown out the noise and just hear exactly what it is, you know, that you need to be doing. Or even for clarity in the various situations that we may find ourselves in.
To be honest, like I do agree. It's because I've noticed this about like human beings and how we process things is like we never make the best decisions when our blood is running, when we're tense, right?
You need to be calm. You need to be calm. Still.
Like I always think about how like it's when there's a turbulence that they tell you to sit still. And that's typically what you need to do. And a lot of times we just think it's about going. But then I've learned that it's very important to sit back. Right? And that's part of what's really shaped the need to do this podcast as well.
Yeah.
Right? I realized we underestimate the power of our own perspective, right? Our own perspective, which is based on our personal experiences, all the things that
Yeah.
we've learned, all the people that we've met and what they've taught us. But part of the issues that we face, because we don't stop to process it, we're not able to know which is really ours.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's really, I think it's
That's
important
so well said.
for us to do that. You know what I mean? But wow, I've always known that we had to have this conversation. I've always known that we had to have this conversation, because it's like, I'll tell you this as well. It's like, apart from all the work that you do, it's like there's a lot of self-awareness that I see when you speak. Right? Like you always.
I'm glad that comes through.
No, because you speak from a place of, oh, I'm not going to speak about what any other person else knows.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak from where I am,
My
what
experience.
I know. And I really rate that, because for me it was an eye-opening experience for me, because I'd seen your book as well. It's like, because obviously when it comes to like writing or putting something out there, like anybody will tell you, it's one of the most naked you ever feel.
Absolutely.
When you put your thoughts out there, people are gonna like scrutinize it.
Absolutely.
People are gonna ask you questions like, who do you think you are? Why
oh my God. So I remember when my book came out, I think I just, done like a press release for a pre-order.
Right.
And a cousin of mine reached out and said someone had sent her a message saying, oh, I saw Ameera wrote a book. And her reaction was like, why? Right? And so I said to my cousin, oh, what did you say? She was like, oh, she didn't respond. And then I said, well, if you decide to respond, you can just tell her, number one, because I can.
Of course.
And number two, I'm coming from 10 years of experience in my industry. So who is better qualified to write this book than me? And I think this is also, the sort of mindset that doesn't allow for such things to be embraced at home.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people one thing I've learned in the past 14 years is not to ever look down on any individual on the basis of what I perceive them to be.
Yeah.
So it might be like, oh, wait, but what about her makes her qualified to write a book? What about you makes you qualified to host this podcast? What about, you can't limit people because you're not God. You don't know what it is that he's doing through individuals. So,
That's true, because like, to be honest, it's like, and I think it's something that I wrestled with a lot before I got into the place where I felt I could do podcasts, right? Because I started to work in mental health.
Yeah.
And I remember when I came into it, I was very aggressive, because for the first time I found a place where I felt my voice really made sense and it mattered. And when we're part of like the guys that worked on making the mental health bill become an act, I was just like, you know what I said, I it's one of the most fulfilled I felt. So I
remember all of that.
I went so hard, right?
Yeah.
And I remember some conversations within the communities, like, this guy didn't even study this or whatever, like why does he? Even I remember one time I was speaking and my mom called me and said, Jaco, which one is all this mental health when you did? Like, my parents are some of my greatest. My dad said, Jaco, you don't start mental health. Did they pay you? And I'm like, so my cousins, so everyone that knew me like the way I was, but then I realized one thing in this whole process is, at the end of the day, it's like, you have to allow yourself be.
Yeah, it comes back to you knowing what the vision is. They may not understand.
No, they would never.
No, but seeing that, right, I remember seeing all of the work that you did with that, the conversations, the posters, the awareness that it took a lot, because you were having a conversation in a space that was not very well understood or well represented at the time. And I think because Nigeria, I don't want to say this and like sound awful, but I feel like Nigeria was built on abuse. And so people are accustomed to abuse. And it's like, you talk about mental health and they're like, oh, what's my business with mental health? Have I eaten today? Or what's my business with, you get what I mean?
Some of the outreaches, that's what we face.
Exactly, but it doesn't take away, that doesn't take away from the validity of
your physical health and your mental health are mutually, do you know what I mean? Yes, the areas where your mental health will affect your physical health, but then you have to be able to address it. But then I do agree with you when you talk about how like a lot of our reaction is trauma based,
absolutely,
and fear based. Like we sometimes we're afraid of what we can achieve, not even what we like. we're afraid about
It's like an imposter
Yeah.
again. So I remember someone asked me, "Oh, how do you deal with imposter syndrome?" And again, I was torn because I was like, "Oh, should I say that I don't experience that?" You know, people might hate me because it's like, who does she think she is
Why is
that
she so
she doesn't?
confident?
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
why
she's
she-
a, you know. But then I thought, you know what? Maybe just maybe there's someone else out there like me who doesn't,
Yeah.
simply because, like I told you, my confidence, yes, I was very self-confident, but I've transitioned to a place of God confidence.
Okay.
Right. And I understand that Christ, you know, I do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Right.
I understand that. I understand that I, you know, need not be anxious for anything. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like, there are things that my faith is so assured. Like, there's
That's like
nothing
your
that,
uncle.
exactly, nothing can take that away from me. And so if an opportunity presents itself and it says, oh, Ameera, you should do this, I'm like, oh, perfect. The time is right. God has made this possible for it to happen. So I don't have I don't want to sound like, oh, you know, I've got it all together. That's not the case, but I know where I draw my strength from.
Right.
And I'm not going to cower to giving a generic response because I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't want you to feel like I think like I have it all together. You know, but I am a work in progress and I'm very, very open to being used by God. And so, yeah.
So literally you see yourself as a vessel somewhat.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's not just about like you, it's more about like what you can give.
I think life is about duty and service to others.
Right.
That's just what I've always thought.
No, I do agree with
and
you.
I think sometimes it's a bit confusing for people because when they look at me, it looks as though I'm about self.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
The beauty industry suggests you're about
it seems like a very personal driven.
Exactly.
But then for you, it's deeper than that. Oh, I like that. But for me, it's like I also think to myself is like the way that I deal with things is like I feel like the universe, God wouldn't give me anything that is beyond me.
Absolutely.
So be it good or bad, and if I'm in a difficult situation, a lot of times I feel there's a lesson here for me, and I feel like, and then I also read a book recently, The Obstacle is the Way.
You recommended that?
Yeah, I did.
I
yeah.
haven't started it.
No, but I
think
think
I will.
No,
but
I feel like it's kind of just changed the way I see it because instead of feeling like sometimes when things happen to you, it's not even a function of whether it's right or wrong. It's a function of expectations, right? There's a certain way you expected this thing to go, but in reality, in terms of the bigger picture, it might not be what is necessary for you.
Yeah.
Right. So once you start to rid yourself of unnecessary expectations, you start to find peace. And then you realize that like what you see as an obstacle, as a threat, is more of an opportunity because what these situations mean is that there's something you need to develop to be able to engage. And at the end of that, you would be a more rounded person, a better person, and all that. Wow, Ameera. This has been such an
I've had such a great time.
So but like we said, there's always something we do here before we finish.
Okay.
It's the card of thoughts. I mean, I call it
Moment of truth.
yeah. But we know one question we hope you don't get.
Yeah, I'm really hoping I don't. Wouldn't it be so funny if I did?
Do you know what I mean? Like that. Do you know maybe the universe really maybe you pulled it for you know what I mean? So you can just pick one. There you go. So you're gonna read it out and then answer it.
Okay. So it says, how often do I walk through my mind's wilderness, exploring its uncharted parts? I think this is so me because again, I'm so reclusive. I'm always, in my mind's wilderness. And I feel like that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration. It's where I draw a lot of my creative expression from. That solitude, allows for me to really comb through areas that, I think if I was surrounded by noise and opinions, I wouldn't be able to dissect and, fully get the lesson out of it. I think also there are parts of my mind that I shy away from because it's like, oh, if I have to face this, would it be a positive outcome? Would it consume me? Would it take over? Or am I really as anchored as I think I am?
So
Do you see what I
so you don't
mean?
want to explore certain thoughts that you don't want to explore that might.
Sometimes, but I find that, you know, as the more I walk through,
Right.
the more I'm addressing.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This
I had
has
such a
been,
great time being
thank you.
on here. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much. All right.